Hello, welcome back. This is episode 107, I believe. We are still joined by Sarah Barthel. Gaby made it in halfway through the last episode, for those of you that remember, and Erika, Brett, and myself. So we were just discussing in our break the difference in our experience, depending where we are globally, of changes that have inarguably happened through our lifetimes, and which continue now, and if anything seem to be speeding up. So we decided we would just get into a conversation with Sarah, but to talk about specifically how things have been different globally, the way different cultures seem to have adapted to technology, but changes that have advanced in parallel to technology, and generally ask some questions of each other, acknowledging that Sarah is just one member of Gen Z. So she's not speaking for all of them, and neither are we some sort of jury panel about to pass sentence on them, because she is a little bit, outnumbered by us oldies. So,
Sarah, exactly how old are you? I just want to establish what the actual gap in the generations here right now. So what is your age currently?
Yeah, I'm 20 years old.
20 years old. Okay. This is fun.
You now have to say how old you are, Erika.
I will be 55 in a few months. So there's a big gap between you and the rest of us here.
Yeah, in fact, Brett, Erika and I are all of a similar age. Just turned 55, Brett, I think you are 54 coming up, are you? And Gaby, we won't say, but you've had a big birthday fairly recently. Is that all right?
There's exactly 40 years between me and Sarah.
40 years. It's like that's a big gap, right? So there's a whole lot of differences and experiences and opinion and curiosity between the gap there that I think we could explore a bit.
Let's see if we can narrow ourselves to the changes that we've seen in 40 years, because we know growth has been exponential and it's doing nothing other than speed up. The number of people on the planet has stopped going up by single billions each year and is now doubling. It's quadruple what it was several years ago. So we know the speed of advance is just on the incline. So let's try and focus ourselves to the changes that we can talk about over the last 40 years. So Sarah, you made the point off air that although we kind of make the assumption that your generation has grown up with technology and is completely familiar with it and it's almost indistinguishable, you actually mentioned that you didn't really get into a lot of tech until relatively recently for you. So how is that even? Because you're a German currently living in Sweden via Portugal, Canada, and other places. So you've really traveled as well. So give us a bit of your experience.
Yeah, I think so. I grew up in the countryside in Germany, Eastern Germany. And for me, technology did not play such a big role in the beginning. I mean, we had the computers that stood on a desk somewhere and we could access I remember having friends that were like, okay, the parents said you get 1 hour on the computer now, and then you would start the computer. It takes a couple of minutes to start, and then you could like play some games and stuff. So that was like the limit of technology that we had at the time. So yeah, like things you guys often mention, or your generation, is like the meeting friends and just knocking on their doors, no calls, no like before chatting to like meet up. So I had the same experience. You would, in my village, I would just run around and yeah, see who's there. So I have the same experience as that. And yeah, technology came later on. I mean, with 11 years old, the first thing that was like my tech thing was a small camera. So I just really, really was interested in camera design and all kinds of stuff in that direction. So I always used technology in that way to be creative. So actually, beginning to start having a life on the net or like working with that was much later on. Like I said off air, was that I got my first like own phone at 16. So because my parents said if you want a phone you have to buy it yourself, so that took the time. So yeah, and that is, I think, the thing that not everybody in our generation grew up completely with technology. So that makes that creates a big gap between me and several others in my generation as well, which is hard to deal with too.
So you're not, I mean, I know we can't generalize to typical. The world is too big for that, and even culturally by our various countries. But I guess you could say your experience was kind of atypical amongst your friends, although your sisters probably had a similar experience to you. Do you think that's got anything to do with the fact that you were attracted to like traditional workmanship and craftsmanship? Because you mentioned in the previous episode about making saddles. Do you think if you had been more exposed to tech for your whole life, that kind of working with your hands, creativity may not have come forward?
I think it still would have, since I also use technology to be creative. So I always try to use it to, like in the beginning, I did graphic design. So I always used something to like create different things. So it wasn't that I was like only consuming stuff through technology. So I think it would I would still get to that point. And even if it would have been through technology, I would have created something from it or with it. Yeah.
I find it fascinating that, because I think in one of our previous episodes a few weeks ago, we talked about that, all this generalization is so dangerous and we do it all the time. And that's how we got talking about it. These generalizations. Gen Z is like this, Gen Xers are like this, boomers are like this, millennials are like this. And the first Gen Z who comes on our call just confirms, yeah, you can't generalize because you have experienced life completely different from what adults would believe when they meet you or your Gen Z. They would just presume this is the way she must be. And you're just proven no, because I grew up completely different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for you guys, it's probably the same as well, that you guys also grew up differently depending on where you were. Your parents might have did different parenting and allowed different things to do. So, and maybe you guys can talk a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It depends also where you grew up. I grew up in a small village in the Black Forest, and the dangers were out there, but our parents talked about it, and I think that's the big difference. They didn't try to keep us safe at all costs. They knew there were dangers, and they told us. So I was very clearly sat down and said, "Look, if a stranger comes up, don't take any sweets. Don't go with them if they say they have cute puppies. Don't get into any car with somebody you don't know. Um, just don't do it, right? If you go to the forest to play, be careful of this, be careful of that, and so on and so forth." So they did warn us. The difference is they let us go. They trusted us that we listened and we wouldn't get into the car, and they let us go. And they were very aware of the dangers. Pedophiles were around. It's not about pedophiles when I was a kid. Of course they were around. And you and they were around in my place, as I figured out when I was about 9. Because a girl who was around said to me, "Is your father doing this and this?" And I was like, "No." And I straight away knew he shouldn't do that. And I said to her, "You shouldn't do that. A father shouldn't do that." So I was very well briefed by my parents. But the difference is they did let us go. And they didn't put trackers, well, on the phone. We didn't have the phones. But you know what I mean? They didn't keep an eye on us. They trusted it will be okay. And I think this is the difference. I think the real difference I see is not generation. It's not so much in generations. It's in societies. And I can see that everywhere. We just said it's probably different where you grew up exactly. And of course, friends of mine who grew up in big, huge cities were more looked like what's happening than me in the Black Forest village. But I think overall I can say that that fear has become far more an issue than it was back then. And I think this is the only really big difference. It's the fear mongering. This could happen, that could happen. I can't let them go there. What's that? And I mean, I had a colleague sitting beside me and her kids, she would ring them 3-4 times a day. "Where are you? Where are you at? Who is there? I don't like him. I don't want to go. What are you doing now? That alleyway? I don't want you to go down that alleyway." That's the way she talked to them, and then wondered, well, all 3 kids suffered of anxiety later in life. It's this fear mongering, I think, which makes the big difference. There's a pedophile behind every bush. Every bush.
That is true, though.
Yeah. I wonder where it comes from. Why is this fear? It wasn't there before, and it was fine. It was no problem. But now the fear exists, and there's no purpose for it. Like, why is it there? Is it there so all these ideas of technology being needed is continued, or like why is the fear there?
I think it's double-sided. One is, there's social media and everybody just puts their views out there and tells you to be scared of this and warns you about that. And, there's just so much noise in the space, all of which is designed to one extent or another to create some need in you, either to subscribe to that channel or to buy that thing. And so there's this constant churning of our anxieties. And the other part is that the technology has enabled things. I don't really know why paedophilia comes up, but probably because it's, the darkest part, probably. And it has adapted so well to technology. The rings of paedophiles that used to exist pre-technology were all quite clever. And I say this having investigated it from a professional perspective. And they adapted and took to technology and file sharing and things in a way that other people probably didn't look at it. I mean, you just have to look at the dark web. I mean, our Royal Mail in the UK, on their big HGV lorries, it says, 16 billion parcels delivered safely each year. And, there's some reckoning in there that, a couple of 100 million of those are dark web purchases that should never be getting delivered to anybody's front door, let alone by your friendly whistling postman. But it seems to me, and again, I'm trying not to generalize, but I know this is coming from a previous professional perspective. The darker sides of society always seem to figure out how to adapt and use a new thing quicker than the mainstream, which probably says something about human ingenuity.
So this concept of the fear, right? I think that fear has always existed. And like, if we're talking about our experiences, we have to go back to how our parents raised us, right? Or the way that we grew up. And I think that a level of fear is always going to exist in a parent for the safety of their kids, right? But the way I grew up, and like Gaby was saying, I was taught, it was instilled in me, these are the things that you're allowed to do. This is the way I'm wanting you to do it, right? This is what's safe. This is what's not safe. Go out and do your thing, but know in the end that this is what we expect of you. So there was fear in my parents, I'm sure, in my safety, but they also had trust in themselves that they taught me well enough to know the difference between a good choice and a bad choice and what was not safe and what was. But the fear lied less in my parents of the world and more in me of them. So it was like I had a fear of God in me that if I didn't get my ass home at nighttime, I was going to hear it, right? Or if I wasn't sitting there eating dinner so that I could go back out again, I wasn't going to go back out again. So I think there's a difference in that as far as fear goes. But I mean, I grew up in a couple of different places, but you're talking about pedophiles or whatever. I had an experience when I was probably about 7 where I was out on my bike with a friend, and we lived in Queens at the time, which is a borough of the city in New York here. We were doing whatever, I don't know, riding our bikes or just hanging out. And a guy came and flashed us, and it was like, what the hell? And I remember feeling like I went back to told my dad, like, this just happened. And we were at the police station. We had to do whatever we had to do. And then that was like the end of it. It didn't turn into a whole major thing. I don't know what happened. I really don't remember, but nothing changed in my ability to still be free and go do whatever I had to do. And my parents let me do whatever. I grew up on Long Island, really. And it was go out and play in the streets. Like, this is what we did. I played in the street. I was a tomboy, riding my bike, playing sports, doing all sorts of things. When the street lights went on, you would hear your name or a whistle. Everybody knew the whistle because every parent had their own whistle tone or whatever. Like, you just knew, whatever, or you'd hear your name. Somebody would hear it. Go run your ass back home. I'm here. You eat, you go back out, you wait to see. And that's just the way it was, right? But I was taught, this is what you're allowed to do. I was never allowed to get into anybody else's car. Or I was going to have my ass handed to me. Like, I'm not allowed in your car. And I knew, whatever. As now I'm seeing the changes, right? When I became a parent, the world at large changed a little bit, right? So now I have to learn how to do the same with my own kid, but then also be aware of what's different in the world. Can't parent your kids the way you were parented a lot of the time and think that it's all going to work out. So enter technology. I didn't have technology as a kid. Now my kid has technology, and it's like, how am I supposed to navigate that? So it's just the pressure of, he got a phone. I don't remember, Brett, what was he, like 13 or something, maybe, when he got his first phone? Because this is where we live and where we grew up, everybody's having a phone. So and the social aspect for our kids at that age were like heavily on the things that they were doing. So there was decisions of allow him to have the phone so that he can keep up with his own age group and stuff like that. But much of the same, dropping the seeds of what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. I think the difference in the fear, which is what your question was originally, like, where does this fear come from, is that, and Alec, I think you are touching on that, it's in our conscious awareness of every horrible thing that's fucking happening in the world is much different, especially when Jared was getting, younger and coming up, and now than we had it. We didn't know of every horrible thing that was atrocity that was happening in the world constantly all the time, to be thinking there's a pedophile around every bush. You know what I'm saying? It's like we had an awareness of what was right and safe, but we weren't seeing it constantly. And I think that is what's adding to the anxiety and the fear of parents that are raising kids in your generation, and what is causing all of that. I need to track you because all of these horrible things that are happening, like I said, I've never did that. I would never do that. I'm never doing that to anybody. But I think that that's what aids to in it. It's like, we didn't hear about all this stuff, but you guys are able to see all of the atrocities in the world in real time, all the time, constantly. And that does nothing good to the anxiety of humans in general, as far as I'm concerned. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Erika and Alec, you both had a really good point there. Because have you ever asked yourself what happened to all the flashers? The guys with the trench coats. They were everywhere, in every country, in Germany, and anybody I talked to. I actually asked this question before, and what had happened to them? Because this is not happening anymore. It's gone completely out of fashion. There's no man running around anymore in trench coats exposing themselves to kids. That was normal. Yeah. It's online now, to Alec's point. They have found better ways. They don't have to run around the roads anymore. They do it online, groom kids online. So do we have even the wrong perception? Is maybe online far more dangerous now than really the streets in certain areas. You know what I mean?
There's a great documentary called Childhood 2.0, which talks in depth about this. We'll put the link in the thing. In the first half is a little bit nostalgic and talks about the differences, but the second half is very much along the lines we've just been talking about. Brett, I do want to hear from you, but I'm just intrigued, maybe with a show of hands, who thinks the world is a more dangerous place now?
No, I think it's the same, only we know about it a lot more. I think it's the same danger. People are people, danger is everywhere, and it didn't change. We just are very aware of it now. And it doesn't help if you watch true crime 24/7. It just doesn't help.
Which you do.
Which I do.
Yeah, I mean, when I think back, Sarah, when I was your age, I was 20. I came to Ireland the first times. There were still the troubles. There was bombs going off. Right, left, right, and centre. I remember being evacuated from O'Connell Street in Dublin because there was a bomb threat. Doesn't happen anymore. Or, right, well, kind of going the other way now. I actually feel we're going the other way again in certain areas. But it's not that it's more dangerous. It's just trouble comes up, trouble goes. The world was always dangerous. My grandmother went through 2 world wars. She definitely lived in more danger than I ever did. Right. She definitely lived in more danger than any of us in the West at the moment lives. Yet, in the West, we perceive at the moment as really dangerous times. And maybe that's why my parents were or Gen X parents, like, they were children during the war. My mom remembers, bombing raids over Germany. She was running to shelters in the night with her parents to hide from the bombs. For her, the world was peaceful after that experience. So, of course, with a little bit of warning, they let us out and play in the streets. Because for them, that was a peaceful time. So it's relative.
Yeah, I think then you have to question, what kind of danger, because there's so much different danger out there. And for me personally, hearing you guys talk is I don't think the world is dangerous at all. Personally, I mean, sure, there are things out there, but I just personally ignore them. It's I mean, I had experiences which might have been dangerous. Like in Canada, I was in a camp and the wildfires started, and they had to evacuate the entire thing. And we were like driving and seeing all this fire all around us, and it was like, yeah, sure, that's dangerous, but I got out of it. Like, it's like, what kind of danger? Mental danger. There's like all kinds of stuff happening in the world, technological danger. But I think as long as you like don't engage in it, it's not dangerous. Like, as long as you get out of it alive, like, is there a problem with the danger? Because like you can provoke it, sure, but I mean, as kids as well. I mean, we just went the other way, so we can do the same when we're older. So
don't do this. Don't no. Look. And this is what happens. Like this could happen. Like the smartest choice would be to go away. Like my parents kind of gave me. I was able to do whatever the hell I wanted. Be hanging on the back of a car in the snow and sketching and ripping around. The person in the car didn't know, and there'd be like 4 kids on the back just doing different things that were dangerous, but yet like you have to experience life, and you wouldn't know what that situation is, and you could walk right smack into it face first. But if you've never been there before, then you wouldn't know it. So by allowing the experience, then you're allowing that individual to grow, right? And I think now, in my judgment, is that we're holding our kids back from the experiences of life, tracking them. Where are they? Why are you over there? Get out of there. Get home now. And you know what? And eating. Oh my God. Like if I wasn't home for dinner, I didn't eat that night. No, you're out of the fridge. You're not eating. That's it. You weren't home for dinner. You missed dinner. Not my problem. Right. So now it's like, oh, I'll just order DoorDash. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my God. Like it's so different. So you learn like, all right, you know what? The light's on. There was no whistle. I see other people going home. It's got to be around that time. If I'm going to get dinner, I better get there. Right. So you went home and got your dinner, and then you went back out. It was, and it was more family time. Right. So dinner was like the time where you were able to get together. And that was one thing that I can say about my family is like that was important for us, was getting together, whether it was the holidays at dinner time. And that is the one big piece that I thoroughly still enjoy, spending time with people, breaking bread, enjoying a meal and connecting. And you see that breaking down a lot. You don't see that as much because now everybody's eating at different times. I mean, maybe it is, it might be different for Sarah because, I mean, here I feel like if somebody's hungry, they're just ordering it and they have food. So, and it's not like that everywhere, right? Let's be real. It's not like that everywhere. And I didn't have that. And I think there was a plus to not having that. There was something that it taught me, right? And not having it so easy, I think was a good thing. I think fear is everywhere and pumped out in the news to keep you small and keep you from growing and keep you from going out and exploring. I mean, Sarah's been in how many different places and has experienced different cultures and different areas and has experienced fear and danger, but now knows by looking at it, I'm just going to avoid it. I'm going to walk away from it. But if you've never experienced, you're like, huh, what's that over there? Oh, let's see. And you're walking right smack into it. You're like, what are you doing? But you wouldn't know unless you learned it. Like, you can't expect the youth to know everything if they didn't already go through something to experience for themselves. And that's a big thing. And I feel like there's an overload of holding them back, parenting, like too much parenting, and holding them back from their life experiences. You want them to be great, let them get hurt. Let them bang up their knee. Let them find out that's not good. Let them, like, I found out the hard way. And I think that was great because it made me who I am. So I think we need to kind of allow them to experience. Yes, we don't want the bad situations for them, right? We don't want the pedophile or, you know what I mean, all of those crazy scenarios. But there's a certain part of the parenting role is explaining the possibilities, but yet not stopping them and allowing them to experience. So when there's something weird going on, you be like, yeah, ding, 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 ding. You know, your son or daughter is going to figure this out and be like, yeah, I'm not getting in that car. I'm out of here. And they, oh my God. And then they had the experience. Erika had the experience, right? Went to the police station. Nothing ever came of it. But the next time somebody came around, I'm sure she was like, I don't know about this guy. He's a little strange. I'm out of here. Right. And not walking into it like, oh, what? So I just hope that there's not which I already know there is, overload of keeping our youth small, because we're only holding ourselves back from growing, and we're enabling whoever, right, the bigger picture is, to manipulate our youth and take advantage of them and keep them, directing them like cattle without them even being aware of it because they haven't experienced certain things. So we got to kind of take the reins off of the parenting a little bit, like to be good in the parenting of what you're giving them, but not holding them back from experiencing their life. And I think that's really important so that they can make decisions, they can grow up knowing, experiencing the pain, experiencing different things, and then knowing. But keeping them small is only allowing somebody else to manipulate them at an older age and not allowing them, you know what I mean? Like, I was working at 14 years old. I was on a bridge with a jackhammer, having fun. For me, it was fun. Just getting bounced around on it. They're like, this is great. Well, that wasn't the experience that, they wanted, right? But it was, for me, times are just different. And I hope the older generation, or the generation that's having the children now, can lighten up on the reins and allow more.
The author Michael Crichton, who wrote Jurassic Park, amongst other things, wrote, it was a good novel called State of Fear, but State of Fear has at the end of it a number of essays, and one of those goes into great depth about a scared population is a cowed population, and they are easy to control. And we would be naive not to be aware that fear is a tool for control that is very widely used globally, and not just by those sorts of bad actor states that we used to be told they're the bad guys. And I think that can't help but trickle down. If the parents are being manipulated and controlled, that fear by extension will go into their children. Perhaps one of the best things we can do for the younger generation is to be a bit of a shield and a barrier, and to say, do you know what, maybe just believe a little bit less of what you're told to believe, be more inquisitive, make your own decisions from a place of curiosity. I think we all sort of recognise that in Sarah, to maturity beyond her years. But I don't think that would be as unusual if more parents had parented the way yours did, Sarah. And I think we probably saw that in the past more. I think, and especially, the the age group that is between us and Sarah, who have been even more glued to their phones than we have, they're parenting by reels and by memes. That's a good idea. Let's do that. That's not working. Let's try this direction. It's like, no, actually go and learn from some people. Think about the way your parents were with you, or the way your grandparents were with you, and be less influenced by these people who are paid to influence you for various reasons. And I think that's probably a wisdom that is worth passing on if we want to see it survive. Any closing thoughts, anyone?
Yeah, I would love another conversation where to actually ask Sarah, because you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation how you had a different experience, and you have sometimes problem with your own people of your age, and I would love to know what that exactly is, actually.
Do we take it now? Or like
I think maybe we could end this one, because this is already at over a half hour, and do it in the next one.
But I love to. Yeah.
Okay, so we won't have specific closing thoughts. We will dangle that carrot. I was going to say a worm, like a fishing rod, but I'm going to stick with the vegan version. We are going to dangle the carrot of hearing from Sarah about the differences she faces within her own generation. So we'll be back with that one in the not too distant. Bye.